Hello, and welcome to round three of WIXOSS October Ceremony 2022. Still rocking, obviously, my Deus Center deck. This time I'm up against Ancient Surprise. So we have a new Ancient Surprise. They have their new piece, World Reverse, which is a nice way to kind of clean up the early game. Um, it's unique that they obviously are the one team that actually has two specific team pieces. So I'm anticipating certainly World Reverse. The other one is not quite as universally useful, so I'm just kind of waiting to see whether or not that'll be in store for me. But anyway, early game obviously grows both Umer and Ott to enter charge 2, draw 2. It's Tawil Center also, by the way, so this is primarily a mono red deck. I know later on we'll see that there's some dual colored Signies in there, but it basically, with World Reverse, it kind of turns every card in the deck essentially into a Lancelot, at least the first one that's played for each turn. Of course, I say that now we have the blue red one, which will give him an extra draw. So, but unfortunately, they only were able to fill one lane, which is actually really good for me. Not that this deck struggles with removing things, but it's always nice to kind of get free value out of that. At this point, I am actually, despite the fact that there is two open lanes, I'm actually digging for a second level one because I only have one level one. And she actually had too many cards at the end of turn, so she had to discard one. So in the meantime, I have discarded, I think that's a Kentucky, I believe, to draw 3. I believe that Baphomet was one of the things that I actually drew into. So it's really nice. I think I had a Servant in my hand. I don't remember at this point if I did. But obviously, if you have that, you prefer to use it as a guard as opposed to filling a lane and trying to threaten damage. So being able to swing in two open lanes with no removal required always feels really good. Yeah, that was the life burst also, I believe, was a vanish up to Signy life burst, but obviously my Signy were both downed. She guards the Elric attack, so feeling pretty good so far. I haven't played a whole lot of Ancient Surprise since the new piece came out, so I'm still kind of curious. And not only that, this one, Tawil Center, is not something you see very often anyway. So I still think that personally I'm a fan of the Ott Center builds if you're building Ancient Surprise. I think Umer is better in like off color or off team, especially like blue centric builds. Tawil I can see. Usually you focus so much on mono red that that's kind of what Tawil does. So you just kind of lean into that more heavily. So this is a weird mix of like a mono red build that you kind of expect, except it actually has some Ancient Surprise value engine in there. Obviously, the ability to generate, enter, and draw cards to refill and reset the game plan kind of thing. So we see, I don't recognize what that is. A little bit of a connection issue here, as you can see, the screen froze. So that's why I'm like trying to get clarification of what she was trying to do. But yeah, it was the World Reverse trigger to vanish. Interestingly, Baphomet was actually only 3k at this point because I only had one of them. I didn't fill my trash enough to do that, which is fine. So it's not the end of the world anyway. But as I was kind of saying, this is round 3. My rounds 4 and 5 matches I was not able to get recordings of. Round 4, my opponent showed up late. I mean, these things happen, so it's not the end of the world. But basically, the time had already started ticking before they showed up. So we really kind of rushed. I mean, the ceremony in general, it seemed, I don't want to say it seemed rushed, but they were really kind of churning out the rounds pretty quickly. So I didn't want to waste time on setting up the recording and asking about, camera and all that stuff. I'm like, we were already wasting enough time as it is to try to get the game in, so I wanted to make sure we had enough time for that. And then my round 5 opponent was actually using instead of doing like a camera situation was doing like a live stream, which is not very conducive to having this kind of split screen viewport. Basically, the only way when I played that game, I played like the full screen because they were streaming the game. So I saw the full view, but I couldn't see, his view and my view at the same time in a way that would really be good to watch. It would just be basically seeing his the whole time, and then mine would be in like a tiny little window. So I didn't think it would be worth to try to make that work, at least with the current setup I had. So unfortunately, I decided not to record that one, which is unfortunate because that was actually a really good game against a Tamago Center control. I really would have liked that one to have a recording of, but no such luck, unfortunately. In any case, back to situation at hand. Couple of life cloth crushed. I did hit a life burst. I also was able to guard the Elric attack. So now on my board, Lancelot's opened a lane. There was an open lane from the life burst, so I've got a Sabnock. I have the Amethystal trigger to discard one draw card, which I think, again, I've mentioned this in previous videos, I think Amethystal is great in specifically Deus Center, just because you're putting things in the trash, which Deus doesn't mind, and in some cases likes. You're filtering out your deck, you're digging for servants too, you can discard a card, potentially draw into a servant if you need that as well. I left Lancelot up, mostly just because I didn't want to generate any extra enter for my opponent than I needed to. Having obviously Ott will give them some advantage to that. Like they're already 2 up from the Ott level 1, and Ancient Surprise in general doesn't really struggle, I don't think, with having all the enter in the world. But I figured it would be fine just to leave the Lancelot up and not banish. So going into my opponent's turn 3, we'll see Tawil. I believe this is the new Tawil. I'm not super familiar with really either version of Tawil. I believe this is the new one that came out. I think it was in this set, the most recent set. Because she has the ability to... the magic card is like Fact or Fiction almost, where you separate the top 6 cards of your deck into 2 piles of 3, and your opponent chooses one of them, one face up and one face down. So they use the other piece, which will vanish one of my Signy and draw 2 cards. Ancient Echo, I believe, is what it's called. Which at this point, I'm actually feeling pretty good, because I know the other piece, which I don't believe, I can't remember if that's the team piece, because Ancient Echo, I believe, is just a red, green, blue piece, and then the other piece, which is the team piece, it costs a bunch. I think it costs like 7 or 8, but it really like refills the board and really threatens your opponent all in one turn. So you can basically go from an empty board to like threatening through, because I think you fill with a 1, 2, 3. You give 1 assassin, 1 lancer, and 1 double crush. I believe it's the level 3 gets lancer, level 2 gets double crush, the level 1 gets assassin. So with that one piece, you can really threaten a whole bunch of damage out of nowhere. But the fact that she's used both of her pieces already, and I'm still sitting on 5 life cloth, I still have both of my assists. Interestingly, my Machina, just because the lanes were already open, like I didn't need to use the Machina, so I still have a Machina to open a lane, and then I've got both of my level 2 assists. I've obviously got both of my pieces still. So I'm actually feeling quite comfortable right now. So opponent's just going through, trying to figure out, this is the World Reverse, played a red Signy, so vanish. It is really nice. Again, people who've played red, especially at any point in Diva format, really knows how good Lancelot is, and to just have Lancelot for every Signy you play is a really nice effect. Causes a lot of pressure on your opponent and kind of forces them to really either keep up pace or, grow their assists. So at this point, I'm deciding whether or not to grow into X. Obviously, I can't grow into Machina because Machina is still level 1. And I'm thinking, they're only threatening 2 damage. I can't remember if I have a Servant or not. Flips into an Animirage, which is it would be nice to fill a lane. Unfortunately, it was a little too late, but that's okay. I can get some recursion back. I believe that is a Lancelot that I'm returning to my hand. Because I think her Signy are small enough that I can vanish it through that. So Tawil has an attack trigger, I believe, as well. I'm trying to remember exactly what it does. I believe it's draw. She can choose to draw one or enter charge one, I believe is what it is. So I did not have a servant, so I do take the 3 damage there. I'm still sitting at 2. Again, I still have both of my assists. I'm still feeling quite comfortable. Just additionally knowing that there are no other pieces that are coming my way. So obviously the Lancelot type effect from the World Reverse is going to be a problem to threaten a lane, but I do have, 2 removal pieces on deck to basically stop 2 of the potential 4 damage that I would be seeing. So I do trigger victory here. There is a life burst. I don't remember which one. I believe it's a vanish effect. It's something that, again, because my board is empty, it doesn't matter. And I return, it looked like a Diabride to my hand. Because just looking at what I had and what I was up against, I figured, because I believe I play some Lancelots here to open the way, and then if I can use a Diabride to protect them. Not that I have the limit. I don't know, 7? No, I don't have a 7 right now. It's just 6. I believe what I'm doing here, well, I'm figuring out, yeah, so there's a Lancelot. That really, I mean, I love the foil decks, especially and the DXM Lancelot art, but that really does not show up very well on camera, does it? The little firework explosions. So there's Diabride. Diabride's enter effect is to, again, similar to Amethystal. You discard a card, look at the top 2, add 1 to your hand, and the other one will go in the trash. I'm pretty sure I'm digging for a servant here. I don't believe I found one. I don't remember for sure. Just by the fact that it wasn't like an immediate discard leads me to believe that it probably wasn't a servant. So I didn't really need Ana Mirage at this point anyway. So that is it. Enervating Melody to give minus 6k. So that's opened a second lane for me. And then we have Exax. I don't know why I paid the other black for that. Maybe I didn't pay off. It looked like I paid 2 enter there. I don't know if that's the case or not. So what I'm deciding right now, all my Signy are red, so the Diabride actually isn't, or not, yeah, Diabride is in play. That if she tries to target any of my Signy, I'll burn an enter out. What I'm actually deciding right now is to figure out, and I grow into Machina Wingslash, just because it's the kind of situation where like I get 0 value out. I mean, I can return a level 1 Signy to my hand, sure, which I think I don't even do that. I think my hand is so full at this point that I don't need it. Basically, I only grow that just so I can grow into level 2 on my opponent's next turn. Because having that extra defensive option, I know, can be very important. And I would rather get a little less value out of it than to be in a situation where I don't have the option to grow. Because again, my resources, I mean, I'm a little low on enter, but the Machina doesn't really help with that. Obviously, my hand is in a pretty good shape. I do have the option to both death deck and to use Deus once per game to refill if I need it. Like, getting the extra card back from the graveyard is not a big deal. And there have been 0 level 1s in situations where I could, felt comfortable removing them. I just haven't needed the removal yet. In retrospect, I could have used the life bursts to vanish, I think, on 1 or 2 of the level 1s earlier. So I could have pointed those at level 2s instead, but for whatever reason, I pointed them at the 1s. In any case, and it ended up not mattering too much, I'm somewhat regretting my choice of not attaching a soul here to open the 3rd lane. So that's something that I probably should have done in retrospect, just because there's not a whole lot of reason not to at this point. I think it's putting the pressure on. So this is Umer. I don't remember which one. I think this one will down. Yeah. Well, down 2 of my Signy. And because of the Diabride effect, she had to pay a 3rd enter. So again, if I had thought to, attach the soul. I could have threatened lethal on that turn, although there is still the odd assist, which I'm somewhat unfamiliar with a lot of the recent tools, and especially playing um, Ancient Surprise with odd assists. Like, I'm just not super familiar with what they do. So it could have been the kind of thing that I was like, maybe, there's another assist that'll stop me kind of thing. And trying to space out your attacks if possible. Maybe you hit a life burst that just shuts you down. Not that they're running focal or anything like that. So I've got 2 enter right now. Machina Smash is still online, which is excellent because that's a great both defensive and offensive option. The X is a little bit harder to use depending on what Signy they put down. It's somewhat hit or miss. Obviously, the enter burn is not relevant. It's so funny that I played the X assist. I mean, I liked it just so you can vanish, pretty flexibly vanish whatever you need to, in terms of like the open lanes or anything like that. But the enter, I faced so many monocolored decks that the enter burn half of it was so irrelevant for so many games. So she's using the once per game ability of Tawil, which, as I mentioned, is to take the top 6 cards of your deck, put them into 2 piles of 3, one face up and one face down, and then your opponent will choose which of those 2 piles you get. So a little bit of a mind game situation. There's a card in Magic that's called Fact or Fiction that's somewhat similar, except the caster makes the piles. It's all face up. The caster makes the piles, and then, or no, I'm sorry. The caster chooses somebody to make the piles, and then the caster chooses which pile to take. So it's kind of the opposite, that you are setting up the piles, and you have your opponent choose which one you get. If nothing else, I mean, it's a draw 3 of some level. So in the open pile, there is a Pandada, there's a Shub, and I don't remember what the third one is. I believe it's just a life burst effect. I don't think it has any relevant text. The important thing about this is that in the face-up pile, there's no servants. So like immediately I'm like, you can just have the face-up pile, because I didn't want to give the face-down pile and have a servant in there and then potentially be swinging into it. Which, not to spoil the ending, is basically exactly what happens. She's essentially digging for a servant at this point, and we will see. I'm looking through and figuring out. Yeah, so there's the, and we will see that. Oh, you can't really see. There was a servant in that pile. So the fact that I chose the face up pile was the right call. Just knowing, because Shub definitely does threaten lanes, and like the fact that I had Machina on deck and like ready to go essentially basically meant that I didn't care what the scariest Signy on like, you can have a Shub because I'll just vanish it. Now if there was a second one, that would potentially be a bit of a problem, but that's something that she would have had to have already beforehand. So I was hopeful that giving the Shub, basically allowing her to go in offense mode, knowing that I have some defensive assists to rely on, would basically mean that on my next turn, I would be able to very easily swing in for lethal, because obviously there's no life cloth left. It's pretty easy for this deck to clear out lanes, so I'm not worried at all about that. And just being hopeful that, she doesn't have a guard. Which, again, knowing that there was a guard in the face down pile, it felt really good, because I'm like, okay, she's probably digging for one. It's a situation where, unfortunate just because of how powerful and useful the guard effects are, that if you only have one guard, if you're doing Tawil piles like this, if you only have one guard that's revealed, there's basically no way you're ever going to see it, because your opponent will know. If there's no guard visible, just give them the no guard pile, unless there's something that's like even more terrifying that will potentially lose you the game immediately. And you just assume that there's a guard in the face down pile and just do it that way. So there is an Eternal Influence to vanish my Diabride. I believe all the enter left was red, so the Diabride effect was not relevant. Not that there's a whole lot left. I mean, you could use some of that enter for lane clearing, which is, again, because of the world reverse, is something that you can continue to do. So exact, oh no, Lancelot goes away. But what this does mean, the fact that now 2 of my lanes are open, it actually means that I have 4 enter now. So not only is Machina online, but X is also online. So I like the 2 strongest Igni, regardless of what level they are, unless it's something that's like 14k or 13k. I can pretty safely vanish both of them and not have to worry about it. So the fact that my lanes are open is, again, not the end of the world, because it means that I have the freedom and ability to stop potential offense attacks. So we go into Machina Smash. I do not pay the 1, obviously, because I would not be able to X a level 3. And again, my hand is so full at this point. Like, really all I need is like bodies on the board. Because I could use souls, I'm already clearing out lanes as it is. So having the extra removal, doesn't really matter. Or the extra cards from my graveyard. I think I'm actually thinking about it, but... Oh, I actually do go for it. Yeah, I think the plan... My thinking, I believe, was that I'll pay the extra 1. I get a level 1. It was a Baphomet, just to really make sure that I can fill the lanes. And then because the limit's 8, like, you're always going to have a level 2, so the X, I can pay 2. Although that was only a level 1 on the board. I bet that's probably what it was. The fact that it was just a level 1, I was like, you know what, I can afford the extra 1. I was planning on paying 2 or 3, so I can do it for Machina instead. So the 1 open lane, Epetum actually does vanish the third. Or no, it's a little too big. I believe it's an 8k instead of a 5, because I think Epetum is only a 5. So I do not have a guard. The XX does nothing. But 2 open lanes. It's pretty confident that she doesn't have a servant. So it's just a matter at this point of kind of going through the motion and everything, and just making sure. So I do charge the Baphomet there. This game, obviously my deck is looking a little thin at this point. But, having Baphomets just mill you out. Like, I have no life cloth anyway, so it's not the end of the world. It's also a question of... So, this is what's happening. I'm doing the math here. She actually has exactly 12 cards in her deck. So what ends up happening is I reduced the... Yeah, I don't remember if I needed to reduce it first. I think I just went for... I can't remember the name of that spell, but it's Vanish a Signy. It's Mill 2 on Vanish. Oh no, I guess this is the game that doesn't matter. I'm thinking of a future game. Spoiler alert. Where I milled out my opponent. But basically I opened all 3 lanes. There's nothing that she could do. Didn't have a guard anyway. So it was a little bit of overkill at that point. In any case, very good game. It's nice to see, again, I was surprised by how many wild card and rogue decks that there were in this ceremony. It was really cool to see a lot of people kind of doing their own thing and not just choosing the card jockeys and the no limits of the world, and basically playing what they like. And that's honestly what I'm looking for in WIXOSS in general, and I love to see it. And it was a great ceremony overall, and obviously this match was also very good. So as I mentioned, rounds 4 and 5, I did not able to get recorded for various reasons. So we will see you back in round 6.